Hello, and welcome to episode 27 of BM by BM. I'm Bailey.
She's Bailey. I'm Maxie.
Yes. In this episode, we will be discussing 12 Monkeys, another Terry Gilliam directed film.
Yes, but this time starring Bruce Willis.
Yes.
So 12 Monkeys is the story of it's post-apocalyptic, isn't it, basically? So
Yes.
the
1997, R.I.P. America.
right. The world or America is a wasteland, and a virus has devastated the entire globe.
Mm-hmm.
So the main character, I forget Bruce's name. Anyway, the star of the show. Basically, they have created a time machine, and they are able to send send agents back. They have tried to piece together a history of what exactly happened, but they're only able to get snatches of what happened, and they key on. So there's a symbol. There's this. They think the issue is something to do with the symbol of 12 monkeys. And so they give this time traveling humanity saver instructions. When you go back in time, this is what you're to do. You're to find. You're to prevent, etc., etc. So this is his as most go back in time and save the world. Narratives are. There's missing information. Well, actually, back the Terminators had much more specific and better information. His is very cloudy. Like there's something happening back there. Go find the place, find the person, and stop this outbreak from happening. Not to give it away too much. He was unsuccessful in stopping a breakout and the outbreak. It wasn't a herring at all. That was red. And so his confusion and frustration with how, and I think this is the first thing to dive into, is how can you save the future when it's just life, when just quote unquote normal life is happening, and you can't recognize the world-wrecking events from all the normal events happening around him.
Yes, and I think that's interesting when he goes into the present, like what would be considered present day. He gets confused, and he's saying, like, well, this hasn't happened yet. It's the present, and so time is kind of relative in the film as well, because when they send him back to try and figure out the virus, they send him back too early in 1990. So then he goes back to 97, I believe. And then at one point he's like in 1917 in World War I, and then he goes back to present day, present, and then he finally goes to 1996. So I think it's interesting that at one point in the film, he says, like, well, I want to be here. And he doesn't want to go back to his regular time that he was living in when he was volunteered for this mission.
Right. Expand on that a little bit. His status and his selection as a savior.
Well, everybody has to live underground after the virus breaks out. And it looks like he's in a prison, and he's selected. It's almost like the claw from Toy Story. Like it goes and picks him up.
Yes. And so he is I forget if he's given some incentive.
Yes, he will be given a pardon if he does the things that they ask him to do.
Excellent. Yes. So, all right. What other
Oh,
can we dig out?
so in 1990, he is committed to a psychiatric hospital. And in that hospital, he meets Brad Pitt, whose name is Jeffrey.
Nice.
And
Yes.
Brad Pitt, he just plays crazy so well. Yes.
Everywhere, Planet Madness.
And I did research, and it says that he asked Terry Gilliam if he could wear contacts for the film because his eyes in the movie are actually brown. And if you look closely, he got one contact to like look weird. So his eyes are kind of like crazy eyes. And supposedly he also cut his own hair to make him look a little bit more deranged. But I do find it interesting that, again, in a Terry Gilliam film, we see the advertising for a vacation or somewhere else that you would rather be. In Brazil, we heard that with the song. But in this movie, they keep saying, like, go to the Florida Keys, go on vacation, you deserve it, see the ocean. And that's something that draws Bruce Willis's character, James, as well. He says he's never seen the ocean. We also have another peek at Christmas as a commercial holiday with not a lot of religious connotations. They don't go into it as much as they did in Brazil, but it is the Christmas season when they're going to take their trip to Key West. We don't see as much technology in the same ways of Brazil, where like you have your coffee making itself and your toast making itself in the morning. It's the technology that you see in this movie is more like a giant orb with a camera of all of the scientists that are telling James Cole what he needs to do and his directive on this mission to the past from the future. And at one point, the scientists sing Blueberry Hill to James Cole while he's like waking up from a stupor. And I totally see that as a Terry Gilliam thing, like just kind of weird, wacky, but also brings you back to the story. I don't know.
That part about that technology bit,
Mhm.
that it's like, so they're in the future. They have like bootleg technology, like they're scrapped and they've put them together. Super interesting. My recollection of that scene with the orb and that stuff, this isn't the polished tech of the future that you see in, some of this, like, Star Trek or those kinds of things where it's high tech. It's like wires hanging out everywhere and this cobbled together technology. But we do have time travel. We don't have slick machines and we don't have consumer technology. It's very industrial, I guess. Maybe.
Yes.
Saying like we don't have time for the niceties, but we have figured out how to time travel. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
So comment a little bit on how all of these folks think about the success of this mission. So, like, if his mission is successful, like, their timeline won't exist, right? Like, if you go back in time and you stop this from happening, then this will not have happened, so we won't be here, right? And there's this little mind game there. If you're in the future and you're trying to change the past, but you're not the one changing the past, how will you know that the past has changed? So there's a little bit of, is that quantum physics there or whatever it is? Like,
Yes.
Back to the Future would just say, you're just opening up another timeline, and, reality spews onto another timeline.
Right.
You continue to exist on your timeline. You just create another iteration
Right.
of reality. But I think there was I'm trying to think there was discussion about this. Like,
Yes.
you failed, and I know that you failed because I'm still here. I shouldn't be here. I don't want to be here.
Yes. And
those lines.
I think James Cole also says, like, I can't change that. Like, he can't necessarily change the guy taking all of the viruses with him. He can't change maybe minute details, but he can change bigger details. But it's kind of like, I don't know, it did kind of remind me of Groundhog Day in a certain way. Like, everything's going to happen the way that it happens, but you can change how you react to different situations. And it's I would like to speak now on the love interest and relationship aspect of this film, if you don't mind.
I'm prepared to receive.
So, again, I keep going back to Brazil because that was another Terry Gilliam film that talks about dystopia. In Brazil, Jonathan Pierce dreamed of this woman and then met her. But I think by the end of the film, you don't really know if they had a relationship or not. It could have not happened. However, in 12 Monkeys, it is like every psychiatric hospital romance comedy. Like, psychiatrist is a woman, falls in love with the crazy guy, and then they just take off. Like, she believes him. It did not seem that realistic to me. I don't understand. There was no big moment of, oh, she definitely loves him now. Like, he kidnaps her. He makes her drive to Philadelphia. He strangles her, or you think that he strangles her and like mutilates her at one point, but he doesn't. And then by the end of the film, she's the one who totally believes him and is trying to convince him, no, you're right. You're from the future. And he's like, no, I just want to be here. I'm everything I said was wrong. It was just a guess. I don't know. And I don't know. I just did not think it was that believable. But of course, with Madeline Stowe, I kept comparing it to Last of the Mohicans with Daniel Day-Lewis. And I'm like, that's the best love story she could ever represent. So why would we try this again?
Well, but what about Stockholm Syndrome? Is that
Stockholm Syndrome? I mean, I could see a little Patty Hearst going on there.
Could that not account for her, basically falling in love with her captor because, again, Stockholm Syndrome?
I don't know if my reaction to someone who correctly knew a present event, how it turned out, would be to fall in love with them. I think it would be just more like, oh my gosh, you might be right. But I also did not write this film with the intention of them having a romantic relationship. That's my opinion.
Sounds good. Okay,
Yeah.
So we have frequently commented on technology. Do we have anything to say here about any wisdom to draw from?
Don't fly on a plane ever.
That one that we seem to have almost been working on recently.
Yes.
No plane trips.
No plane trips.
All right.
It was really funny to watch this through the lens of Life Now, because when the doctor and James Cole go on the run, they go to a shady motel, and then like a pimp busts up in there, and then they end up hiding out in a movie theater, And of all of these places, I'm like, you can't do that. You're not 6 feet apart. You're not wearing a mask. It's like, when are we ever going to go to movie theaters again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Anyway.
one connection I will make is I just watched the most recent episode of Last Week Tonight, which was about conspiracy theories.
Yes.
And the conversation there, one of the things he said is conspiracy theories can be a way of coping with a fairly like a mundane, a simple event that has, massive impact, such as it's just hard for us to accept that a single person could, in a real way, change the world by single-handedly murdering the president of the United States, JFK. The death of Princess Diana, etc. Where very, very, very similar events that were not successful, we don't,
like the Reagan assassination attempt.
Yeah, we don't. There's no conspiracy. It's like, yeah, idiot tried to do it and didn't pull it off. So it did make the kind of click here for me. We're basically talking about in the film this, almost this very much lone wolf kind of person. For us, it's hard to wrap our heads around one person could do what they had to do, could pull off a humankind altering event basically single-handedly. That's hard to come to grips with. So I don't know that was, may have just been my wandering mind bringing that in, but there you go, connection.
That makes sense.
So if we want to spin that positive, you could say you too can change the world if you only put your mind to it. Speaking of which, there's an expression that I find amusing. People say things like, we're going to make history. And I'm like, that's literally what you do every single day, technically speaking. All right, wrap up. What's your best shot? Don't throw this away.
I don't know. I think it's interesting to think of what would we try and do if we could go back and make something right.
Yeah. I guess I'll make mine a criticism. I would like to criticize and call it an indictment of the best minds of that time, that they can't think of how to make life better in the present. They must spend all their effort and all their energies on looking backwards. So if you build a time machine, what could you build in the present to make the present a livable, instead of having people live in cages, what could you possibly do to move forward from wherever you are? Maybe that was their great mistake, was they insisted on looking back instead of looking forward. So beware.
Yes, beware.
All right, friend. We have one more episode.
Yes. So to our regular viewer, we will not be broadcasting on Friday, but we will be broadcasting next Wednesday about the FX series Devs, which can be viewed on Hulu free of charge. So you have time to binge watch it, and we will discuss it next week.
By the way, I love how smoothly you moved that in. We're very excited to announce that we're moving to a new time slot.
Yes.
At 8 p.m. on Wednesdays.
Yes.
Right after whatever you're doing before you watch the show on Wednesdays.
Right.
So good stuff. And then we also have another big announcement. That's the last in our preview series, making it a perfect 27 episodes. And then we're going to begin our new serialized approach to this. And our first series is Mrs. Bailey.
Aliens and
Yes.
Monsters. Yes.
Aliens and Monsters is our first series.
Yes.
So next Wednesday, at the
Mhm.
conclusion of our last intro show, we will announce the first of that series. But what you can expect from us next is a series about, I think it's 7 or 8 aliens or monsters movies. So you will recognize them. We're not going to spoil any of it now, but Devs is our last intro show, and then Aliens and Monsters.
Yes.
Next week.
Get ready.
See you then.
Yep. Stay safe.